Alright, what's up team? My name's Matt, I review running shoes here on YouTube, and today we are comparing the Adidas Boston 12 with the Adidas Supernova Rise. Now this video is in response to a question that I asked on the YouTube community page, and that question was very simple. What has been your favorite running shoe in 2023? And a lot of you answered the Adidas Boston 12. And then I got a question about comparing the Adidas Boston 12 with the Adidas Supernova Rise. And look, on the surface, they don't really compare. But then when I started thinking about it, they really do compare. So that's what we're talking about today. Let's get into it. Alright, as usual, let's get started with those disclosures. This video is in partnership with Roadrunner Sports. The team over at Roadrunner Sports was good enough to send me both the Boston 12 and the Supernova Rise. However, they don't have any editorial input into this video, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. Let's get started with price. The Adidas Boston 12 will cost you $160, the Adidas Supernova Rise $140. Guys, that's a win for the Adidas Supernova Rise at $20 less expensive. Oh, and by the way, I will be providing links so you can pick up both of these at Roadrunner Sports, or just one of them, depending on which one you like. But $160, $140. So far, a win for the Supernova Rise. The Supernova Rise has 35mm in the heel, 25 in the forefoot for a 10mm drop. The Boston 12 has 38mm in the heel, 31 in the forefoot for a 7mm drop. Now, I know there's a lot of you out there that are going to discount the Supernova Rise just because it has a 10mm drop. Hold your opinions. There's nothing inherently wrong with a 10mm drop. Millions of runners love it. It just seems that my channel is often a magnet for those that don't like such a high drop. Let's talk about weight. Adidas claims that in a US men's size 9, the Boston 12 tips the scale at 9.5 ounces or 269 grams. Adidas says that a US men's size 9 in the Supernova Rise tips the scale at 9.8 ounces or 277 grams. So the Supernova Rise is 3% heavier than the Boston 12 in the US men's size 9. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, the Boston 12 tips the scale at 11 ounces or 312 grams, and the Supernova Rise tips the scale at 12.1 ounces or 342 grams. So in my size, the Supernova Rise is 9.6% heavier than the Boston 12. So it's pretty clear who wins this round, the Boston 12. I guess before we go any further, we should talk about what these shoes are actually made for. What is the average person that buys the Boston 12 or the Supernova Rise actually looking for in a running shoe? Now, the Supernova Rise is a daily trainer. This is a shoe that you put on, you knock out most of your miles. The Boston 12, for me at least, I think it works as a daily trainer, but it's intended for those mid to long distance runs, maybe where you're picking up the pace a little bit more than you might in a Supernova Rise type daily trainer shoe. And I guess that is evidenced by the price and definitely the fit and materials. So now that we're on to fit and materials, let's talk about them. Let me hold up the Boston 12 and you can see this. It's very thin. We've got a bolster on each side of the heel collar, just below the rim, and then there is no padding here on the back of the Boston 12. Now there is a little bit of a heel counter in the Boston 12, but it's quite thin, but still it does provide a nice bit of rigidity. Now although when I put my foot into the Boston 12, I get a nice feeling that the shoe is holding me in place by those two bolster pads. It's pretty nice. It feels good when it's on your foot. Now, the Adidas Supernova Rise is, to me at least, it's a very traditional daily trainer type of upper. It's like super plush. There's lots of padding all around here. The heel counter is very rigid and it's very big. Like your heel is locked into place with this heel counter. And this is just what I would expect with a daily trainer. However, it just feels a lot more substantial on the Supernova Rise than it does on the Boston 12, which actually surprises me that the Supernova Rise isn't a lot more heavier than the Boston 12. I mean, it's heavier, but not by much. Carrying on with the tongue on the Supernova Rise is very plush, just like the rest of the padding around here. The tongue on the Boston 12 is super thin, almost race-like, if you will. I mean, it's a nice thin piece of felt. There is a little bit of extra padding right where you would tie the laces across your midfoot just to stop that lace bite, but all in all, it's very race-inspired. Even the upper on the Boston 12 is an engineered mesh, and if I feel it, I want you to channel me feeling it, but it's quite rough. It's almost like a burlap sack. So not very nice to the touch. And also not very stretchy. So when I put my foot into the Boston 12, it feels like I'm putting on a race day shoe. And I don't mean that in any other way other than it's very difficult to put on. Like there's no walking up to the front door and just slipping my foot in, tying them and out the door. I have to sit down, I have to wiggle my foot in, I have to pull up this little elf here and pull up my heel to get it seated. Now once my foot's in, the shoe feels really good. I'm locked in well. Good lockdown across the midfoot. Heel, surprisingly, doesn't move, but it is a bit of a challenge to put on. Supernova Rise, on the other hand, is a lot more traditional. And of course, it's traditional in looks with the amount of padding. It's also, because of this padding, it's a lot easier to put in. This is the shoe that I could just walk up to the front door, slide my foot in, tie it, and I'm out. Now, the Supernova Rise also uses an engineered mesh. However, this mesh is more knit-like. It's a knit-like mesh, and it's very soft, and it's very nice to the touch. I like it. Feels good on my foot. Now, don't get me wrong. The Boston 12 also feels very good on my foot. It's just we do have that burlap sack look and feel, so you definitely have to wear socks with the Boston 12. You could probably get away with not wearing socks in the Supernova Rise, although, I don't know, especially here in Florida, that's really disgusting to not wear socks in your running shoes. So how about this? Forget I said anything about the socks, just wear socks in both pairs of shoes. Now let me hold up both like this so you can look at them. I think as a product of the upper and maybe the sizing, the Boston 12 fits quite narrow around my forefoot. Like it feels like a narrow fit. I think it would be a challenge for someone with very wide feet to get into the Boston 12. The Supernova Rise, because it's a nice soft and pliable knit upper, it feels like there's a little more room in my forefoot. And I haven't measured it. This is just by feeling, kind of thinking about my feet while I'm running. It's pretty much a product of everything that goes into the Supernova Rise, but I do find the upper and the fit a little more comfortable than I do in the Boston 12. Oh, let me just take a minute right here to say, if you're liking this video, if you like running shoe reviews, if you like running shoe comparisons, go ahead and drop a like on the video and consider subscribing. Doing those things just helps me and helps the video get pushed out to the running world. And moving on, let's come down to midsole, because we know that the midsole is what matters. I mean, overall, everything matters, but the midsole is the most exciting thing. And the Adidas Boston 12 is using two midsoles. We have Lightstrike 2.0 in the heel and Lightstrike Pro in the forefoot. Now, there is a bit of a blend. The Lightstrike Pro does come up to the heel and the Lightstrike 2.0 does come down to the forefoot, but the Lightstrike Pro is thicker in the forefoot. The Lightstrike 2.0 is thicker in the heel. Lightstrike 2.0 is an EVA foam. The Lightstrike Pro is a TPEE foam. Now, the Lightstrike Pro is Adidas's top of the line race day foam. It's what they put in the shoes that they want you to run fast in. So it's nice that we've got a good blend and we've got the Lightstrike Pro up on the forefoot where it matters when you want to push the pace. And the Boston 12 does feel nice and snappy when you do decide to pick up the pace, because also this is a training shoe for those faster days, at least more so than the Supernova Rise. The Supernova Rise, on the other hand, is using a brand new foam. At least it's brand new in this shoe. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of other shoes with this foam, but Adidas is calling it Dreamstrike Plus. And the Dreamstrike Plus is a PEBA-based foam, and PEBA is kind of like the be-all and end-all of race day foams. It's generally not as resilient as other foams, but the energy return is top-notch. So to have PEBA in a daily trainer, it's kind of a big deal. There's a couple more things to mention, because on the Supernova Rise, you can see on my pair right here, we've got these grey support rods that come up and they follow the metatarsals of your foot. And this is like a denser foam than the Dreamstrike Plus. And this support rod system does run from the heel all the way up to the forefoot, and it doesn't exactly promote speed in the shoe, doesn't provide any snap, but it does provide a little support, and it contributes to smooth transitions in the Supernova Rise. Now, I know that Adidas is calling this a support rod system, but I think that's a little misleading because they are just pieces of foam, not exactly rods. I mean, I know you can have rods made of foam, but I think of rods as being made of something just a little sturdier. All right, enter the Boston 12, and the Boston 12 is using Energy Rods 2.0. Now, the Boston 12 and the Energy Rods 2.0, these are rods that I think deserve the title rods because they're made of glass fiber. So just because of what they're made of, they're going to provide a little snappier ride, or at least a snappier response. However, in my experience with the Boston 12, I didn't actually notice that feeling of propulsion from the Energy Rods 2.0, at least when I'm comparing it to race day shoes that have similar support mechanisms like a carbon fiber plate or something like that to give that propulsion. So I don't want to lead you into thinking that the Adidas Boston 12 is like a race day shoe just turned down a little bit. It's really not. Now look, this would be a fine shoe to race in, especially if you were looking to save a little bit of money and you didn't want to spend that $250 that seems to be required now to get into the race day shoe market. But I didn't actually notice the poppiness coming from the Energy Rods 2.0. I definitely didn't notice any poppiness coming from this support rod system on the Supernova Rise, but that's to be expected. Remember, this is made to be a daily trainer. Now, if we come down to the outsole on the Supernova Rise, we have full coverage. This bit in the middle, it's clear on my colorway, but there is outsole rubber, and this is Adidas's Adiwear outsole rubber, and it seems to be holding up extremely well. I actually don't notice any wear. It's looking pretty good. Even on the back lateral heel, which I'm always scuffing, it looks really good. Oh, I do also want to point out the shape of the Supernova Rise, at least the rocker profile. We do have quite a bit of toe spring, and there is this prominent heel bevel here in the back. So when you are running fairly slow, or you just heel strike all the time, Supernova Rise is going to feel really good transitioning from heel to toe. All right, let's take a look at the Adidas Boston 12. Now the Adidas Boston 12 is using Continental rubber, so it is Adidas's more premium rubber that they use. And let me look at the back now. I am seeing a little bit of wear on my rear lateral heel, but honestly, for the amount of volume that I've got into these shoes, it's really nothing at all. These are holding up beautifully. So listen, the Continental rubber on the Boston 12, I think it's obviously a better rubber than the Adiwear, but just from looking at it, the Adiwear is holding up extremely well. So I don't think that's a decision to choose one shoe over the other. Now, I did say that I've run quite a bit more in the Adidas Boston 12 than I have in the Supernova Rise, but I just want to show you this. And I talked about it on my full review of the Boston 12, but I do have this wear right here on my big toe. And I actually wore this little hole into my big toe. I mean, I say it's a hole, it doesn't go all the way through, but the inside layer of the upper has worn away. But this happened on my first run. Now, my first run, it was a very hot day. These were soaked with sweat. I did go out and run 17 miles right out of the box, but that's no excuses. This amount of wear after my first run is really unacceptable. So if you run in the Boston 12, I'd love to know if you've had the same experience. Saying that, I've run quite a bit in these shoes since then, and the hole or the wearing away hasn't gotten any worse after that first run where I wore it down. So I don't know, maybe I changed, maybe I was like especially tired that day, or my feet were tired, and my toes were just bumping the top. Who knows? But either way, that's quite a bit of wear on the toe of the Boston 12, and the Supernova Rise, it looks really good. Now, I haven't had these nearly as long as the Boston 12, but the upper is holding up beautifully. In fact, I would say they almost look brand new still. I mean, except they're covered in dirt. It's like crumbling all over my desk. But aside from that, the upper is in beautiful shape. And just because of the materials, I predict that the upper of the Supernova Rise is going to be far more resilient than the upper of the Boston 12. Now let's compare ride. Really, this is what it's all about. Guys, I gotta tell you, this was surprising to me, but these two shoes feel very similar with the ride. Now I know, I told you that this Dream Strike Plus is a PEBA foam. When we think of PEBA, sometimes, at least for me, I think about PEBA being a little softer ride. And then when we put a carbon fiber plate into it, it kind of stiffens it up just a little bit, but on its own, it seems like a very soft foam. That is not the case with Dream Strike Plus in the Supernova Rise. And while generally I am a fan of a soft plush ride, I found the ride of the Supernova Rise to be a real treat. I enjoyed it being a little firmer because it made me able to use this shoe for a lot of different things. I've done tempo workouts, I've done interval workouts, and I've done long, slow runs in the Supernova Rise, and it feels good for all of them. I mean, those long, slow runs is what this shoe is made for, but what surprised me was when I was able to pick up the pace, and the shoe still felt good and light underfoot. The Boston 12, I don't think it's going to be a surprise to tell you that this also feels good when you pick up the pace. I mean, it's a really good shoe. And if you are a diehard fan of the Boston, I think you could probably use this for a daily train. I mean, you could put a lot of miles in it and it would be fine. However, I think the Supernova Rise rolls a little bit nicer when you're running easy than the Boston 12 does. So in a nutshell, to me, these shoes ride so similar that I don't think you need both. I think you have to make a decision which one you want. And although the Boston line has a lot of hype behind it, and I feel myself drawn to the Boston just because of that hype, for me at least, I think the Supernova Rise is a better shoe, and at $20 cheaper, it's just a little better value. Now, I know there are a lot of you out there that have run in both of these shoes, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which one do you like better, Boston 12 or the Supernova Rise? Let me know in the comments. Alright guys, that's it for today. My name's Matt B. This has been my review of the Adidas Supernova Rise versus the Adidas Boston 12. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.